Director of TreeFolks with us this evening, and Becky Woodward. Many of you are aware of how much TreeFolks did to help our community after the 2015 flood. TreeFolks, working with Hays County, private landowners, and other stakeholders, developed Trees for the Blanco, and to help accelerate the recovery of the Riverside Forest. In 4 seasons, TreeFolks planted over 200,000 trees along 30 miles of river. Earlier, we were talking about the fact that our very own Chris Middleton was instrumental in distributing those trees, and her picture is on TreeFolks' website on the reforestation page, so check that out. In looking at Andrew Smiley's biography, 2 key words stood out to me: sustainable and food. He grew up in Louisiana, and his family raised most of their own food in the garden. The growing, canning, freezing of food probably played a part in molding his future. His earliest professional effort in Louisiana was a job pursuing policies supportive of ecologically sound agriculture through an environmental advocacy organization. Around this time, he held a volunteer position with a nonprofit developed to operate farmers markets and support community gardens in Southeast Louisiana, and eventually he became executive director. He went on to manage an electronic communications and marketing training program through the Southern Sustainable Agriculture Working Group. He moved to Austin in 2005 and worked with the SFC, Sustainable Food Center. He rose through the ranks and served as deputy director through 2017. His next mission was the management of Texas Organic Farmers and Gardeners Association. And I believe now he is past president of that organization. Andrew likes biking Austin's trails, swimming in the springs, and paddling around the lakes, rivers, and bays of Texas. And I know he likes trees, and I'll let him tell you about that and correct anything I may have messed up. Take it away, Andrew.
Well, and thank you for that. And thank you so much for having us today. This is just a really good opportunity for us to talk about what we do. It's pretty simple. It's trees and it's folks. It's TreeFolks. Can't say one is more important than the other, but without the trees, we wouldn't have a whole lot to do with the folks, and without the folks, we sure couldn't get any of the trees in the ground. So yeah, I just really appreciate the introduction. And yeah, I will mention one thing. I am so glad to be back in the ecology space outside of agriculture, because most of the farmers we worked with really established they gauged their success from one year to the next, and success had to be confined within that one growing season. But trees, the success of trees extends, 40, 50, 80, 200 years. So we're dealing with some long range impacts here. And that really keeps me going. That's something that is of interest to me. And I will say, while that might be a bit of a difference, there are some similarities in that just like we don't look at one plant and call it a farm, we don't look at one tree and call it a forest. It is an entire system. And so as we look at the system of our urban forest, here in Austin, we see that it extends so far out into our adjacent communities and neighbors in Bastrop and Wimberley, up in Williamson County. It is an entire system. So I appreciate TreeFolks giving me the opportunity to really explore our work from that systems view. So I'm just going to share, if y'all don't mind, share a little brief history about the organization, talk with y'all a little bit about how we got here, where we are today, and all the various programs. I'll mention briefly some ways to get involved, but I am most excited about leaving the lion's share of the time tonight to Becky. Becky and I had a chance to go over her presentation earlier, and it's just so awesome, the work that, like the direction that she's able to take our work with this project. So I'm really excited about hearing from Becky, much more so than I am about talking.
So, thanks, Andrew.
You're welcome. But yeah, so a little bit of history about TreeFolks. Many folks may not know that we are over 30 years old. The organization was founded back in 1989 by a group of friends who gathered together on the winter solstice around the campfire. And among their topics of conversation were global warming and how can we save the world. And if you have ever stood around the campfire on a winter solstice and discussed big issues like global warming and saving the world, you know that some pretty big solutions get thrown around. Well, these guys happened upon the solution of planting trees. They said, if we each planted a tree, we would each be doing something on our own to impact this global issue. So the neighbors did just, or the friends did just that. They planted trees in their yards. And then they realized they could plant trees in their neighbors' yards. And then some of them actually got permission beforehand. And then they realized they could plant trees at schools and in parks and on right-of-ways. And before you knew it, this idea that emanated from a campfire in 1989 became TreeFolks that had the backing of City of Austin and countless volunteers to plant trees along street medians, to plant trees in parks and schools and public spaces, and even work with some private entities to help rebuild our urban canopy. And that was what we were all about for a long time there. We were really focused on building the urban canopy and seeing that as the tree cover within the city limits of Austin. We were planting trees, we were giving away trees, what we now call adopting out the trees. No longer do we say we give away free trees. We have to, we have to really encourage folks to see this as a long-term commitment. So it's an adoption. But planting trees, adopting out trees, leading huge volunteer events, engaging folks to plant trees, providing educational programming, all within the city of Austin was our focus for several years, and that was our strength, and we stuck with it. Fast forward to 2011, and the Bastrop County wildfires, the complex wildfire out there that took out, I forget the exact acreage now, but something like 40,000 acres of lost pines. And what a unique ecosystem that was before the damage, unique enough that everyone really understood the necessity of rebuilding that forest. And rather than just bring folks in to plant trees, the idea was to really engage community and get neighbors involved in the reforestation effort. And that's really why TreeFolks was brought in to help lead that effort. Is because not only did we have staff and other resources that could work with trees, but we really also understood how to work with communities and mobilize community volunteers to get involved. And over the course of about 5 years working with that community there, we planted over 2.2 million loblolly pines to help restore the lost pines region there. And yeah, thanks for that, Lynn. Yeah, I kind of applaud inside every time I hear that too, because it is indeed a special place. Unfortunately, the expertise that we had in post-disaster reforestation came in handy again in 2015 following the Blanco River floods that I'm sure you all are, well, several of you were directly involved in. And through that effort, we replanted somewhere around 40,000, I believe, cypress trees and some other native trees. One of the things that was most impactful about that effort too was the landowner education, where we not only got to work with the community to plant the trees, but we also got to work with several landowners there and provide. Oh, it's 200,000 trees. Okay, thanks. I think Val, I think that might be one of our staff people, one of my coworkers. But so the opportunity really to work with landowners on how to manage that very precious resource there along the river And that became a pretty key part of our work, was large scale reforestation at the same time that we were still maintaining our focus on the urban efforts, adopting trees, planting trees in the city, and providing educational programming here. Um, and the decision was made that rather than just put this capacity for large scale reforestation work on the shelf until the next disaster, we decided that we would get out in front of the next disaster. And that's when we launched the Eastern Travis County Floodplain Reforestation Program, where we are still using our lessons learned from work in Bastrop and in Blanco to do large scale reforestation. Last year, we planted about 86 acres. This year, we'll plant a little less than that. We had some challenges just with COVID and such, understandable. But through that large scale reforestation work, where we're planting tens of thousands of trees, we are also generating carbon credits through the Carbon Plus Credits program. These are verifiable credits based on some pretty rigorous science that we are then able to transfer back to the city in support of our zero carbon goal for the city. So I like to tell people that, so we're in the carbon market now, y'all, so we're gonna be rich. But we know that's not the truth. Our main product still is our mission. Our main goal is still to plant trees. But I really like the Carbon Plus program because it gives us a metric. It gives us another way to talk about the work that we do. So that's what we're still doing today, is our NeighborWoods program, where we are adopting out trees for residents in Austin. Our sapling days, where we're giving away little sapling trees through public events when we can have them, and through other community distributions. We are also still doing our educational programming. The Urban Forest Steward program trains folks in how to take care of the urban forest, and then engages them in a service learning project after they complete the course. We're also still engaged in our communities program, where we're planting trees along rivers and streams and waterways in partnership with some City of Austin folks. And then of course the reforestation work that's aligned with our carbon capture is still ongoing as well. This is the core of what TreeFolks has done for several years, and this is the work that we are going to continue to be committed to. We will certainly refine some of our approaches and tools and resources, but the core of this work still remains trees and people. And that's why I think the name TreeFolks will persist. Our mission is to strengthen community, to build community in Central Texas through planting and caring for trees. So it is all about community as well as trees. So that's one of the reasons it's really special to get to, interact with other communities like the Native Plant Society and other groups too, so we can share this information and just kind of share the word. Y'all know what trees are good for. Trees are good for habitat. Trees are good for beauty. They're good for shade and slowing down or intercepting floodwaters. Trees have so many benefits that I like to say it doesn't matter what your values are. There's an on-ramp for anybody for trees. And so with that, I would like to just encourage folks, if you're interested, get involved with TreeFolks as a supporter, as a volunteer, which hopefully we'll be able to have again soon, and any other way that you can see, just staying in touch. Real quick, our website is treefolks.org, and I would encourage folks to check out our Keep Austin Rooted webpage. There's some really good information there about the impact of trees and the work that we do. So, so without any further delay, we all came here to hear Becky talk about her amazing projects. So I want to quickly introduce Becky and then turn it over to her. We have a core staff of 10 or 11 full-time people, and then we were able to hire seasonal field assistants. And Becky came to us as one of those seasonal field assistants. And then I realized that really she should have my job. After looking at her resume, I'm ready to, step aside and be like, you're in charge, Becky, take it. So Becky has her bachelor's in science that she got from Texas Lutheran University down in Seguin, and built onto that her professional science master's in environmental management and sustainability from St. Edward's University here in Austin. Those provided some volunteer opportunities where Becky was able to really build some hands-on field experience. There were a couple of things, or several things that she did. One that jumped out at me was research that she was able to do on milkweed as part of a scholarship or fellowship award that she received. So professionally, Becky's got tons of experience, most notably a stint as a National Resources Technician over in Sanibel, Florida, working on the J.N. Ding Darling National Wildlife Refuge and doing some coastal wetland studies there in Florida. And then following that, came on back home to Texas and worked with Travis County, also as a natural resources tech, working on mapping and sighting golden cheek warblers, also working on removal of invasive plants, fire ant control, you name it. She's done it. So Becky, I'm impressed by the experience that you bring to the organization. I'm so impressed too by the work that you're doing with this targeted community tree distribution. So Becky, thanks for being here tonight. I'll turn it over to you, and eager to hear more about your project.
Awesome, thank you. So as Andrew mentioned, can y'all hear me okay? Yeah, okay, cool. So as Andrew mentioned, I went to undergrad, majored in biology in Seguin. That's where I fell in love with plants. I did all plant research in undergrad, did a lot of DNA work with plants. And then I built on that in grad school by trying to incorporate soil biology into restoration. Erosion washes away the topsoil, washes away all the natural microbes that are essential for life. And so I wanted to see if I could restore milkweed, the antelope horn milkweed, and have better results if I inoculate it with some native fungi. And so that was awesome. I had a lot of fun doing that. And my advisor did a lot of prairie restoration stuff. And so it was fun and really helped me decide where I wanted to go. And so I worked over at Ding Darling National Wildlife Refuge, did a lot of mangrove ecology, seeing how mangroves reallocate their resources when there's a huge influx of nitrogen and phosphorus, also known as pollution. And did some seagrass monitoring, mangrove, and some manatee rescuing, and then went over to Travis County, did a whole bunch of different kind of surveying and management, and then wound up at TreeFolks because even though I'm a plant person, for some reason I had this gap in my knowledge of trees. And so I really wanted to fix that, and it's been just a blast. I love it here, and I love all my coworkers. It's been nice and a good place to be, even though it's weird and different through COVID. So I just want to give you a little bit of background on NeighborWoods. Our NeighborWoods program gives out 4,500 5-gallon trees a year, and the program started in 2002, technically, but it started before that, but it just started going by the NeighborWoods name in 2002. And so this is a partnership between the city of Austin and Austin Energy. And basically you apply for our program. We have this motto, right tree, right place. So we distribute native trees and we distribute some fruit trees to help with food security. But our whole goal is to decrease the urban heat island effect. And in the past, we would have really big events. I'm sure lots of you know about them. You could come, get a free tree. But unfortunately, can't really do that this year. So this year it's just been kind of upended, everything's different. But that's okay. We've been working and rolling with the punches. So basically you apply online now, and then we look at your property using aerial imagery. And we have these spatial requirements, you know, trees should be 50 feet from power lines. We learned the importance of that a couple weeks ago. And so we'll send you a tree offer, and then you can actually choose the species that you would like to receive. And so we offer a whole bunch of different natives, basically whatever the nurseries can supply, we'll offer it. And our goal is to have, you know, lots of diversity. And so starting in 2002 to 2014, we distributed over 43,000 trees through the NeighborWoods program. And Greenbelt GIS Consulting helped us to figure out if we were reaching our goals of decreasing the urban heat island effect. And so they found that we in fact are, and that our 43,000 trees conserved over 5 million kilowatt hours of energy and reduced over 27 million pounds of carbon, which is quite significant. So I wanted to take a minute and talk about the urban heat island effect. And I wanted to bring up that it's not so much an island as it is an archipelago. So as you can see, you know, there are going to be spots all throughout the city, like parks, where it's not as hot. And here is a nice little visual that was put together by the city of Austin by Alan Halter and some Texas State students. And so this is downtown Austin, and you can see the state capitol in the middle. And you can see this is from surface temperatures in 2014. About 8 different satellite images were averaged to produce in the summer. So, well, from April to September. And so those temperatures were averaged, and they overlaid this map. And so you can see areas like the convention center here in the center, it's really hot. There's a lot of pavement, impervious cover, and up kind of in the green belt, you see cooler temperatures. And this is at 183 and Mopac, where there's just a ton of buildings and impervious cover concrete. And you can see the higher temperatures. And over in the bottom left, you can see Bull Creek. And it is just beautiful lower temperatures where there's that canopy and some creeks. And finally, here's TreeFolks way over here on the right side of the screen. And you can see that this is all pretty much old farmland. And so there's not very many trees over here. But you can see down at the very bottom in the center, there's the airport, and it's just totally dark red. Not very good for your urban heat. So some benefits of increasing the urban canopy is that it decreases surface temperatures and can lower utility costs, which can be a critical thing for lower income residents. It also decreases the atmospheric carbon and mitigates the negative effects of climate change. In addition, lots of studies show that in areas where you increase the urban canopy by even just 10%, you can see better health outcomes. So less people reporting mental health issues, and lowered rates of diabetes, more people are going outside. And so the city of Austin has put together, using the 2020 census data, this lovely community tree priority map. And it basically establishes how vulnerable communities are based on climate change. And so there's lots of different factors that go into this, like canopy, surface temperatures, poverty levels, air pollution, several other things that you can then go in and filter for. And it's a really nice interactive tool that helps us establish where our priorities are as far as where NeighborWoods tree should go. And so you can see that the highest priority areas are primarily this eastern crescent of Austin, where it's historically lower income, higher minority communities. And so if you go through this map and you can filter it for at least 10% poverty level, the highest priority areas, and then 30 to 40% canopy cover, you get the map that's presented. And this 40% canopy cover is a threshold that was discovered, I think in September 2019, the University of Wisconsin published this research that showed that as you increase canopy cover, you have a linear relationship with surface temperature. But once you pass that 40% threshold, then your benefits start to exponentially increase. And so we wanted to target areas that are close to 40%, that we can hopefully get there in the next 5 to 10 years to really reap these benefits of the urban canopy. This area specifically down here is where I have been targeting. The average surface temperature is 2.6 degrees warmer than the rest of Austin. It's got a 34% tree canopy cover. 15% of the people in this community are below the poverty level. 86% are people of color, and 84% lack a college degree. And so one thing that I really struggled with was getting a connection with this community, because I not only wanted to get trees there, but I wanted people to feel better about their green space. And so one thing I struggled with was how to get people to sign up. So we converted everything into Spanish so that, and I speak a little bit of Spanish, but the other NeighborWoods assistant is pretty fluent, and so she's been really helpful. And I had so this is the flyer that I came up with to try to get people to participate in our program. And unfortunately, learning opportunity, I did not put the phone number on it. So that is like not cool, because people have to have internet access, which, as you know, not everybody has, especially if you're in a low income area. So this is something that moving forward, we'd like to address. But for me, I have a strong science background. So when I approached this problem, I thought, okay, let me try to explain that once these people reach 40%, they can really have all these benefits. And I proposed it over to the city of Austin. They're like, this isn't going to resonate with these folks. And so it was a learning opportunity for me, and kind of a struggle, because I really just needed to know what this community prioritizes and how can I meet them where they are. And so really targeting the decrease in the energy use, cooling down their yard, and then also our fruit trees. Fruit trees are a big hit, but I will say that the NeighborWoods program's priority is shade trees. And so this is kind of a struggle that I'm having, is that a lot of these folks want small trees or fruit trees, but I'm trying to get them to get shade trees. But more connections that have helped me to gain more participation is connecting with GAVA, Go Austin, Vamos Austin. They've posted on their social media this flyer and sent it out to their constituents. And I've had one person apply from that. So far, the goals of this program was really to get 50 trees, and that was the low ball. I mean, we really thought I was going to get 200 trees out of this, but I think I have 17 trees so far, and 12 people signed up, and I really want to get at least 25 people. So it's been a little bit of a learning process, but I'm just trying to put in the work and reach out to community partners that have connections with these communities so that we can get the right tree to the right place. And this is me with my lovely, here we go. this is what I do. I drive around town with this lovely big box trailer and the huge F-250, and I deliver trees to people's houses. So this year's been hectic because everybody's at home and everybody wants to plant trees. So we have this unprecedented increase in demand. And then after the freeze, we have lots of supply issues. And so it's been crazy. And usually we'd pass out trees at big events. Now we have to deliver them all over town. But it's been nice, and it's really enjoyable to give people free. I don't want to say give them free trees. I want to say give people the opportunity to adopt free trees, because they're just always so thankful. And yeah, so thank you for listening. And I know I glossed over some things, but feel free to ask some questions. And yeah.
Well, Becky, I just wanted to say thanks for that. That the idea of really targeting, drilling down into communities where there's opportunity to really, really reach that tipping point of 40% cover is, I think that's a goal that we will be working into a lot of our NeighborWoods work going forward. And with this as the first effort of, really that practice, I think we're all going to learn a lot. So,
Yeah, lots of learning opportunities.
Lots of learning. Yep.
But I mean, as you know, as long as we're making efforts to make this more equitable, we're meeting the moment, we're doing our part to ensure that vulnerable communities are protected, because those are the ones, when you think about climate change and you think about climate resiliency, the west side of Austin's going to have a lot more resources if their power goes out to go get a hotel. Whereas the east side, they don't have those resources. They're kind of stuck. And so making these changes to our program and just incorporating this equity, it can really go a long way for these people's futures.
I'm just curious as to what kind of reactions you get from people, even people who say they don't want trees. What are their reasons, and what resonates with people?
Yeah, so that's a great question. One of the big struggles is, well, I don't know. For me, it's a struggle because I want to give out a lot of big shade trees, but people really love fruit trees and they love flowering trees. And so pecans are a good way to kind of bridge the gap, but we've had a lot of shortages of pecans this year. But now we finally found them again, so there's a light. But yeah, most people, they really want the fruit trees and they really want the flowering trees. And some people, most of the time, the people are really receptive. So I actually went to this neighborhood and passed out flyers and put a flyer on everybody's doorstep, and with another employee at TreeFolks. And you could honestly tell which people are going to sign up based on what their yard already looks like, and that's kind of the struggle, because we reach people that are kind of like-minded, and so a goal is to try to get those people that don't have any trees in their yard to try to get some trees. Because when I walked up to people's houses that had lots of beautiful pots already, they're like, oh, fantastic, I'm definitely going to sign up. But it was a little bit harder for some people that maybe had a vulnerable tree or a dangerous tree. And they're like, well, you give me this tree, and then what happens if in 10 years it dies and it's going to fall on my house? And so that's why we've started this remove and replace program, where we fund for dangerous trees to be removed, and then we'll plant a new one. But we're working on progressing that program because it is so expensive. So it only benefits so few people. It's harder to get the funding needed for that.
Have you noticed any difference in the people that you're contacting as to whether they own their house or whether they're renters?
Yeah, you bring up a great point, because we do require that you're either the homeowner or you have the homeowner's approval. And so that's inequitable in and of itself, right? And so it's something that I don't know, it's kind of unfortunate. And you got to think like also about apartments. Like lots of people in apartment complexes want these trees, and we do give some trees to people in apartments for sure, but having a spot to plant them is important.
Becky, do you guys help plant or offer to help plant, or you simply drop off? And if it's that, do you give detailed instructions as to how to plant trees?
Yeah, so that's a great question too, because in years past, we would have volunteers that if you needed planting assistance, we could help you. But unfortunately with COVID, it just hasn't really been possible. And so there is one church group, like the Wildflower Church or something, and they're really dedicated to going green. And so I've been in contact with them, and they've offered to help plant and get their church group to help plant for, older residents or people that don't really have the ability to plant the trees. But primarily we just drop them off. It's like, I look at my list, I see you got a chinkapin oak and a desert willow and a fig, and I'll run them up to your doorstep, and we include some planting instruction packets. So we have, we'll give you like step by step, we'll teach you about the root ball and not burying it, and give you some tree care instructions, but we'll also email you and send you videos because our planting instructions are very dense. It's just a lot of reading. So I know that some people might not read it, it's just reality because it's really dense. But luckily we do have nice videos, and so we'll send people video resources on how to plant them and care and pruning, and well, definitely how to care for your tree after the freeze, all those things.
That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for the question.
Becky, I'm wondering if you have some sort of follow-up program, like a year after people have planted the tree, or further down the line, do you go back and check in on the baby?
Do. Yeah. So we do a survival study every April. And it's 50%, 58 to 67% of the trees make it. So we do follow up. We'll send postcards and emails, and even do some drive-bys to see if we can see how the tree's doing.
Yeah, I'll just give a quick shout out to a couple of other members of our staff who have joined tonight. Margot Piper is our development director. So if you would like to speak with someone about making incredibly large donations, Margot, that is Margot's specialty, is receiving them. And then Valerie Tamburi, who is on our reforestation team and who's worked on the large scale projects with us. She's also on the call tonight. So yeah, I'd certainly welcome any other questions that folks might have about about other of our programming too.
Are you guys going to come back to Hayes County anytime soon? Because we have a big west in the east side. They're in desperate needs of trees. We have a lot of that's our minority populations are over there too.
Yeah, we would like to, and some of the expansion that we're looking at is like we've just become really aware that there is a lot of demand and interest for more trees, more large-scale reforestation, more neighborwood trees, and so for us, it's it's a matter of increasing the work that we're doing within the city of Austin and finding some efficiencies that will enable our expansion, in the urban core here. At the same time, though, also finding those opportunities to expand into into other communities, and those communities where we already have a relationship, like Bastrop, like out in Blanco County. Those are or Hayes County, those are the areas where, where it's most appealing. Like I said, that where we can build on prior relationships. So key for us, of course, is funding. And a lot of the work that we're doing in the city center is city funded, but we are building our capacity to generate corporate sponsorships that that are going to expand our work, and also individual donations. So we see those two approaches, and potentially some grant funding, but primarily corporate sponsorships and individuals who will enable us to do that expansion. I know a lot of the smaller communities that we want to work with don't necessarily have the resources that City of Austin does, that that can underwrite some of the work. But that is our hope and expectation, is that we'll expand the reforestation work specifically that is tied with our Carbon Plus carbon capture program. I think is especially offers some good opportunities for growth.
Good.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add on to that, that I'm really looking forward to when NeighborWoods is able to expand, because, it's more expensive to live in the city of Austin than, say, Pflugerville or Manor. And so if we really do want to make this thing more equitable, then we're going to have to start offering free trees or tree adoptions to those communities, especially those historic farmlands, where everything's just been pretty much chopped down.
Yeah, that's all black. The other side of 35, a lot of it's blackland prairie and was farmland,
Exactly.
and there's really a sparse trees in a lot of places there.
Yeah, that's one of the worst things for me, is sending rejection emails when if you're not in the city of Austin, or if you don't get your energy from Austin Energy, then I can't give you, I can't provide a tree for you. And it's just the worst when you look at people's property and you see nothing but old farmland, and you're like, I'm sorry, just wait, maybe in the next 5 years, and hopefully we'll be able to expand.
Have you ever been able to get the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center to propagate trees for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. We've actually been talking with a couple of partners about doing some propagation ourselves. There's just not a commercial market for a lot of the native species that we want to incorporate into our plantings, and just because they're not commercially viable, it's kind of hard to come by some of these trees. So we are experimenting right now with some seed capture or seed gathering. And sending those seeds off to a nursery to grow, for them to grow them out for us. But at the same rate, we're also hearing interest from other partners, like the Parks Department and Watershed Protection Department, that having a more readily available supply of some of these hard to find trees would be helpful. So we haven't committed to a new enterprise just yet, but if it's something that would support our mission and perhaps enable some other partnerships, like with job training programs, that sort of thing, or even community colleges, it's something that we're looking into.
Andrea, I'm involved in a mitigation site in North Texas, and we're planting a little bit over 4 million trees. And I can give you a go by and a couple of contacts, and we can talk about propagating trees on a big scale for very little money. If that is interesting, and it sounds like it would be interesting.
Yeah,
so
yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, yeah, this year we pretty much bought out all of the nurseries that are generally our suppliers.
Right. And of course, it's a landscape. The nursery, where the nursery feed comes from, basically it's all about housing, really, and what trees are needed, and that's the trees that the nurseries plant, just like you're talking about. But if there's a need on a different scale or a different buyer, then then it can work to your benefit. And I think y'all are in a great place. I don't know exactly how much property y'all have there along the Colorado River, but obviously that's some pretty fertile area, and you would have, I presume, some water, and water is the other critical component. So.
Mhm.
That would be awesome, dude, to get some connections.
Yeah.
And yeah, we do have some of those resources. We've got plenty of land out there at Hornsby Bend on the Colorado River. There is, that is the solid waste treatment facility. So there is non-potable but clean water for us to use for irrigation. And then there's, of course, the dillo dirt. I don't know if everybody knows what dillo dirt is, but that would be the digested biosolids that, I wouldn't put them on my food crop necessarily, but I sure grow some trees in it, grow some hay in it.
Yep, for sure, And it's a great place to bird watch.
Yeah. And I just want to point, it is, for sure. And yeah, we'd love to see more people coming out there and really taking advantage of the space there. Wanted to point out that Valerie put in the comments that our current suppliers primarily are L&L, James Lovegren, and the Texas Forest Service. So we do work quite a bit with Texas Forest Service. And in fact, they're the ones who've done some custom growing for us. And then a couple of others, Rennerwood and Arborgen, that we've worked with for many years.
I wanted to touch on this question in the comments. Have I tried convincing people that trees increase property values? I haven't gone in that aspect for this job. Now, when I got my master's degree, I took a class on environmental economics, and economics is not my strong suit, but that's how I've convinced my mother to keep all of her big cypress trees in her backyard. I'm like, in the future, there might not be too many cypress trees around here, and it'll increase your property value. She actually, she lives right on the coast of Mississippi, and during a hurricane, basically every house that didn't have trees got wiped out. But for some reason, her house was saved. And I'm like, well, keep those cypress trees. They'll help you. They're there for a reason. But it would be a good take to try to convince people to get these shade trees,
There is a lot of research on property values that were affected when Dutch elm disease destroyed the elm forests up in the northeastern part of the country. And over the 20, 30, 40 years that people were trying to get their streets reforested with different species, and the changes in the property values. So there is some research on how tree cover affects property values in urban settings.
Very cool. Yeah, I'll have to look into the Dutch elm disease. I'm not sure if the city would be on board telling people that their property values would increase, though. But we'll see.
They might not want to plant them then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they might want to hear a little more about how the trees can help save them money on their electric bills.
Yeah.
Whatever people buy into.
Yeah.
Would Austin Energy be willing to give a direct rebate to those that plant a tree from your program?
That would be cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Becky, I have some relatives that live in or close to Nashville, and my father-in-law, his house, there are no trees in his yard. And I've, was like, okay, let's go to the nursery. Let's get you some good trees. And he's like, no, I don't want any trees. I don't want to deal with the leaves. I don't want to deal with all the, the ancillary things. And then I learned year before last, when my sister-in-law moved into a house up there, that she spent about $1,000 paying somebody to pick up all the leaves
Oh my
from the trees in their
gosh.
yard. Yeah, and they have these huge vacuum trucks, and they come around and they vacuum up all the leaves off of the yards.
Oh my
And
gosh.
they basically charge you by the minute, however long it takes them to vacuum up the leaves. It's amazing. I couldn't believe it when I saw it.
And that's nuts because we really encourage people not to rake their leaves.
Yep.
You know, it's especially in the east side. Well, honestly, the west side too, where you've got just all this limestone soil or
Virtually no
limestone
soil.
rock.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, leave the leaves, please, because give these trees a chance, especially the trees that are losing their leaves right now. Like, they really need that extra added nutrients into the soil to be able to recoup. But you know, people are so worried about beautification and feng shui. That's one thing that people, you know, we look at your property through aerial imagery, and we see room for a large tree in the back and a small tree in the front. And some people will respond and they're like, hey, I don't like that there's a small tree in the front because it messes with the feng shui of my house. And I'm like, okay, like, would you like a large tree in the front, or how can I help your feng shui?
What do you say to the people who cut down their trees to let their grass grow better?
Oh, I try to educate them about the facilitation effect. And, you know, yeah, that's a big struggle. But just try to educate. You know, lots of people, they just simply don't know, you know, and can't really blame them for not knowing. It's not, you know, lots of people haven't had this kind of education. And so I just try to educate them. My dad is a landscaper in Houston, and so I have a lot of preparation, and he does work for very, very wealthy people like Bob McNair and the owner of the Tennessee Titans, you know, and so they don't really necessarily care about the environmental benefits. They just want something that looks pretty for a party they're having. And so I've just grown up kind of being mindful and trying to navigate, you know, okay, I understand you want the beauty, but there are also many other benefits that are still beautiful by planting native. So it's prepared me.
Yeah, that's something I would say just as important as the trees going in the ground is the education in the community, and just, you know, sharing those little tidbits of wisdom and myth busting, all these little elements that, you know, like we may have learned in second grade, you know, or remembered incorrectly. And so, yeah, that's what I love about the mission of TreeFolks is it's not just the trees, it's the education and community building. And then, you know, you'll be out there raking your leaves, whatever, and then your neighbor's like, hey, don't do that, you know? So
Yeah.
I just love it. It can spiral into so many different things. That's the beauty of TreeFolks to me. But I agree with you, Becky. It's being cognizant and then, yeah, finding a pathway forward.
Right. Let's see what our common ground is and what you really care about, and maybe I can find a tree for you.
So
Are you guys working with the Austin ISD? I just sat in on a seminar they had, a webinar they had on the school parks.
Yeah. So we, NeighborWoods also does a lot of community projects. And so we provide trees for lots of community gardens all around town and parks, and also for Austin ISD schools. And I think our community trees program even helps plant some trees at some schools.
Yeah, we're doing an installation right now, a tree planting up at Pillow Elementary. Excuse me. That'll include some outdoor play space and a trail and several trees. So we do that quite often.
I figured you guys were involved in that.
In fact, the AISD forester is a former TreeFolks staff person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, because
I don't
it was
know.
interesting because they were talking about how the schools were different, and some of them have lots of stuff and some of them have nothing, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah. And the way to teach kids to like trees is to give them trees
Right.
Exactly.
to grow up with.
Yep.
I don't know who else
Sponsor a tree.
watched it. There was Chris Middleton offered a link to a really great presentation by Doug Ptolemy, which was about the importance of trees to the connection between songbirds and butterflies. And part of the point of that, I don't know how many people this resonates with, but a lot of people love birds. And birds need like thousands of caterpillars to raise their young. And some of the best trees, according to Doug, some of the best plants are really trees which support hundreds of caterpillars, which in turn, allows the birds to really succeed. So that's a benefit that could be mentioned, and it might resonate with some people who really like birds.
Definitely. And that's one thing I did was we have a tree menu. So it basically has the picture and some tidbits about the plant. And then we also have it in Spanish. So you can look at that when you're deciding what tree you would like to receive for us. And this year I added some, is it full sun or shade, and what are its water requirements, and an easy, just like small image. And I also added the bird thing. Does this tree attract birds? Does it help birds or pollinators or even deer, squirrels? And some people are like, most people, they want to help the bees, they want to help the butterflies. Oh, cool, I'll have squirrels, but some people are like, oh my gosh, I can't have anything that attracts deers. I don't want birds in my yard. I don't want squirrels in my yard. And I'm like, all right, I don't know what to tell you.
We tell those people to move into an apartment.
Yeah. Yeah.
What they
But-
don't realize is they're probably already there. They just don't see them.
Exactly. Yeah, we've had some people email and just kind of like, what do I do? My chinkapin oak, every time it shoots out new leaves, the deer just eat it so fast. It's just constantly a twig. Like, I don't know. Fence it off, or I don't know. Plant more.
Plant more.
Yeah.
That's so my mom. She has cages around all of her little saplings, and she's so protective of them. And she'll send me a picture every month. She gets them from a TreeFolks sapling adoption days, and she's like, "Look at my blackjack oak. Look at my." Anyway, she'll take pictures of the deer trying to eat it through there. She's very protective.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I should tell her. You can also just plant some more, Mom. But yeah, she has one that she's like in love with, of like fawning over. Oh man.
Oh, nice.
Okay, mute.
Oh my goodness.
But back to the birds, I just want to also mention that, we're planting these NeighborWoods trees. We're distributing 4,500 trees a year, but the birds do a lot of the work too, because they eat the seeds and they transfer them. And so, it's good to have these birds around, even though 2020 was the year I finally became more of a birder. They're so charismatic that, people that don't necessarily favor the environment too much still love birds. So I thought, I'll let those people deal with the birds and I'll deal with like soil microbes or something gross. But the birds, they're really good indicators of the overall ecosystem health. And it's cool that they also contribute into this reforestation of the urban canopy.
Okay, I would like to thank you guys, Becky and Andrew. This has been wonderful. Thank you for the presentation, but even more, thank you for what you do for TreeFolks every day. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having us. We really
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
Thanks for sharing your time with us very much.
Glad to
too.
be here.
Yeah, and we'll hope to